for one.
Hello, welcome to Retro Toy Princess. I am Allison Troy, and my guest this evening is Aaron from Payne's Toy Samples.
Hi.
Hello, and we're coloring today. We're going to color a page out of a vintage G.I. Joe coloring book, and we've both picked the Cobra Eels.
If I can get that back to where it was, because otherwise
Yeah, right?
it's
Yeah,
gonna look weird.
yeah.
All right.
Nobody wants
There
to
we
do
go. You know,
that.
that's too far.
There you go. Oh, there
I think that'll work. That'll work.
Yeah, that'll be good.
And I started early, so I started
Oh,
coloring while we were talking
oh my
backstage.
god, it's so horrible.
I
I'll
know.
never have
I
you
am.
back.
I'm a cheater. I'm a cheater. I
Cheating.
cheated.
You've cheated yourself more than anything.
Hold on.
All right. So really quick for the two people who will show up to this when we go live, that don't know who you are, quickly explain who you are and what you do on your channel.
I am Payne's Toy Samples. My name is Aaron. What I do, basically, I do toy therapy. I talk about doing things like customs. I'll do customs live. I do dios live. I do conversations with other collectors about what their collections mean to them and which parts of their collections have meaning and why they're meaningful. Also, I have a catchphrase. What did you find joy in today? And that's not just a phrase to be a phrase. It's more of kind of how I've lived my life, because you have to kind of find something every day that's worth being around for. So you have to find a little bit of glimmer in whatever is awful and horrible and evil in the world. So that's kind of what I do.
At times there's a lot of that, so it is good. You may hear some crashing in the background. We are pre-recording this because Aaron
I'm difficult, and my son doesn't allow me to do anything
there
on
is
the
some
weekends
scheduling
until after he's bed.
on Aaron's side, but also this is being recorded in the month of November, and I have some nebulous holiday travel things that might be happening. So it felt like a good idea to have something in the bank for this month. But because of that, it's evening as we film this rather than Sunday morning, and it's prime cat activity time. And we have a 10-month-old kitten, well, 10-week-old kitten, not 10 months, who is pretty active. So if you hear crashing in the background, it is not the Pinkertons.
He woke up and chose violence. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. The Pinkertons have not come to get my Magic the Gathering cards or to let me know the line is dead or whatever. It's just the cats flying around the apartment being cats. So you've got a 10-week-old, we've got an almost 5-year-old, we have a almost 8-year-old cat, and there are different levels of play and violence that happens with that. So there may be hissing, there may be, but everyone will be okay. So and so yeah, also again for the two people who will be watching this who don't know Payne, Payne has had me on his show to talk customs and talk toy therapy, and we love that because it's definitely something that's needed. I think especially in the collector community, I think a lot of us are dealing with some form of trauma. And I'm actually going to color without my glove this evening because my eczema is not flaring up, and I don't have a bunch of scratches from the cats. So it'll be a rare gloveless episode. Yeah. Anyway, we should do. Let's make it official. Aaron, what are you coloring with?
I am coloring the Cobra Eels.
What are you coloring with?
Do what?
What are you coloring with?
Prismacolor, the color pencils.
Excellent choice. That sounds familiar.
Yeah, you might as well get some use out of them. They only got used a little bit. I used to color a lot back when I was working in the psych hospital because I would
Yeah.
be coloring with patients to get them to talk. So, but I haven't done a whole lot of coloring in the last, 8 years since I left there. So,
Yeah. Well, especially it's interesting because it is sort of in that time frame that the adult coloring boom has really sort of happened. So you were in before it hit, and you're out afterwards.
yeah, that's kind of how it works.
You know. I'm coloring with Prismacolor also, but I'm using stuff from the Scholar set,
Oh,
which is the quote unquote budget line for students. I'm also using some couple colors from the Prismacolor Premier manga, whatever. The
manga,
anime person,
manga,
manga
manga.
set, because there's some brights in there I like, as well as since the eels are underwater, the Prismacolor Premier Under the Sea, because as they say in
Monster.
that song, things are much better down where it's wetter, so get a bucket and a mop.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's what I'm coloring with. And normally,
Mine is just the Premiere 72 series, whatever. Yeah, Premiere.
and for anyone watching this, if you want any of these sets, they are in my I'm an Amazon affiliate. Here's where I show, and the links will be down in the description where you can pick those up. And if you pick them up through those links, I might get a little bit of a, is it a commission or a, I don't know.
It's a commission.
They give you a commission or something. It's
For lack of
exciting.
a better word, it's a commission.
Yeah. So there we go. Commission.
They'll throw you a couple pennies.
A couple pennies is better than a couple pennies I didn't have before, especially since it'll all just go back into pencils and paper. So,
Exactly.
but anyway, so adult coloring, it's for me. It's been really interesting as I sort of dive into it because whenever I first heard about it, as somebody who had gone to school for art, um, and some of this is based on the material that was available for adult coloring that wasn't necessarily inspirational. I sort of had that. What is it? Oh, the snotty, stuck up art critic, sort of like, oh my god, it's ridiculous.
The art snob.
Yeah, I had that, and it's been sort of interesting as I sort of have, during the pandemic when we were on lockdown, and I sort of had the idea because I found a bunch of my old strawberry shortcake vintage coloring books that I had never colored in
Mm-hmm.
because I had some and I colored in them, but I didn't have good coloring materials, back in 1982, 83 or whatever.
Oh yeah. We
So
just had Crayola and the generic Crayolas that you got
yeah, and I
that were
often
mostly wax.
and my mom would often get us the Kmart brand, which were super waxy, and the purple in that, which you really need for strawberry shortcake. Um, the wax in it would bleed through the page, and it was just very disappointing. So I went through a phase where as a child, I was collecting coloring books, and I would get them and never color anything in them because I didn't have the right colors. So it was always this thing where I was waiting until I, got. And the goal was at some point I would find like magical crayons that would be
That would
perfect.
allow you to color it the way you want
It
to
would
color
allow
it.
me to color. So I ended up, like I had it sort of started with the Shira book, the Who's Who. They came out right when the line came out. And I spent a lot of time trying to find, and there was a Wonder Woman coloring book I got 2 or 3 times as a kid that had a full story, had an actual story in it, where that they adapted from the Golden Age, where she falls underground, and she and a marching band from the United Nations. It's when Wonder Woman worked at the United Nations as Diana Prince and the Crisis Bureau, and she has to go rescue this marching band, and she gets Paula, the Amazon scientist, who is a reformed. In the Golden Age, Paula worked for this guy in Europe who led the country of Germany. She was like one of his agents, and she was hideously ugly. And then Wonder Woman Golden Age. It's a fun time. That's why me and Muriel are going to do a podcast where she reads all of these for the first time, and I get to see her have. Oh my God, what did
Oh,
I just read?
yeah, I can imagine because
But
the BS, the bondage and
just the
domination
not even
themes.
just the bondage, right? All
Oh, that
the
yeah, that
ableism, that's a lot. But
Marsden was definitely a little heavy-handed at some
yeah,
point.
yeah, yeah. Safe words would have been required for sure. But yeah, Paula, like when she's Wonder Woman finally captures her and she goes to trial, and one of her former agents throws acid in her face to prevent her from talking,
Yeah,
for ratting out the um the guy in Europe and his his fun boys,
yeah,
the Tiki Torch guys, and so Amazon Wonder Woman uses the purple ray, the magical purple ray to help heal Paula, and their Amazon science makes her pretty, and because she's pretty, she becomes good and joins the Amazons, and she's a
ugh.
good guy for the rest of the comic run
Yeah,
because she's pretty.
let's give little girls
Yeah, right.
connotations that if you're ugly, you
You're
must be
ugly, you're
evil.
evil, and that's a really interesting trope that still to this day
Oh
sort of
yeah,
happens a
exactly.
lot. Even in the Wonder Woman movie, like there was that weirdness with Dr. Poison where she's
Disfigured?
scarred,
Yeah,
yeah, disfigured under her mask.
yeah.
And I had a hard time necessarily wrapping my head around that in the movie being because in the comics, the original Dr. Poison was not disfigured. She was a Japanese princess who fought for the Axis, but was a master poisoner in Wonder Woman. And she also dressed as a man to be Dr. Poison, which of course now people are like, oh, all of it's like, but back then, like probably based on the society in Japan, like that,
Oh yeah,
it's
she would have
it's
had
like,
to have died
yeah,
if
right.
she's yeah.
Especially because because of what we're wanting to do with that, I've done some research into how the royalty was set up, and it's pretty it's understandable. Like really quick
Yeah.
sharpening. It's not a drill, it's just a sharpener. So
I'm old school, mine's manual.
mine used to be, I still whenever they get tiny use this little guy, but I was one of the reasons I often wear the glove is it helps with carpal tunnel type stuff also, and it was to the point where I was, when you do, when I do a short, it's 2.5, 3, maybe 4 hours, and I will do 2 or 3 of those in a night. So it's like every little bit to sort of save that wrist action.
Mhm. Oh, I get it.
Hopefully, hopefully Kayla's here for the premiere, so when I say save that wrist action, she can
Yeah.
get her
You
digging.
you need your double entendre for the evening, right?
For sure, yeah. So, but it was just interesting, that they made it that. But in the '90s, when they introduced her, she did have sort of a disfigurement, but it was more in the line of like a Joker, where she had tested on her, which they did carry that over to the movie. But
Yeah.
she had done something where her eyes would never close, so she was eternally like big eyed, and like she had done this rigor thing where she had a permanent smile, and she had essentially disfigured herself. But to me, like it was to because of the uncanny valley nature of it.
Yeah.
It was to unnerve her patients.
Was that the second John Byrne run, or is that
Yeah, it
the
was after John Byrne when
okay.
I think it Eric. It might have been Eric Luke, the guy who did Ghost. I think maybe it was
Okay.
when Yana Paquette was drawing.
Okay.
So, but yeah, so like, and that's what I was, and I didn't process when I have a friend who does a lot of active. She's on the spectrum, and she's one of the people who here in Portland, like she's very much not a fan of Autism Speaks. I'll put it that way.
And
She's
there's not a
probably
whole lot of autistics that are.
yeah, right. Especially
Um,
ones who are highly functioning whenever they can create a life for themselves
yeah.
that enables them to function. Like she's very high functioning, and until she's not, and she can create a life where that happens. But that's not a vision that she, and I'm not gonna. I'm saying this not. I'm just being diplomatic. I'm not going to be her. Autism Speak does not create an environment where she's at all enforced in her own empowerment. So
Yeah, no.
there are most of Autism Speaks is of the mind that it's a disability. It can be cured. There's something wrong with them, and that's pretty much not my opinion. Like I don't.
It's a communication disorder, if anything. I mean, the
Yeah,
reality of it is, especially with my son, he's living proof that it's 100% a communication disorder.
yeah, and like it's just I don't know. It seems really gross. But she was the one who pointed out. And that was when I got to take a step back and be like, wow, I'm being that person where I'm like really attached to a character that I shouldn't be really attached to, but it's like a great Wonder Woman movie that made me feel like, wow, they got it right for a change.
Yeah,
Which it could have gone really bad with Wonder Woman. So
yeah,
I had to step back and be like, no, you're 100% right. And if they had stuck to the comic story, that would have been a really different brand. There's still a great conversation, even with her sort of disfiguring her own face that way. There's still a
yeah,
conversation to be had there, but it's a very different conversation than because the way the movie backstory is her facial scars and whatnot are because she tested her stuff on herself, but
yeah,
not that her intention was to be disfigured. And
yeah,
at the end, Ares uses her unattractiveness as a reason, as one of the reasons she should be why she was evil and why she should be destroyed.
yeah,
And Wonder Woman doesn't actually, like in the movie, doesn't actually counteract that argument. Her argument is just like, like I'm not gonna throw a tank on her because not everyone is all bad, but there's
yeah.
no, sort of no defiance. So I got it, and I sort of wow. Um, I needed to check myself a little bit, which is good. We all
Yeah,
have those
and I
moments.
and I think that disfigurement or a lot of unfortunately thematics, they use the disfigured people or um the ones that look different and make
Yeah,
them the bad characters or the ones
right.
that are suspect. And
Yeah,
it's
well,
an unrealistic portrayal, I mean, of real life. That doesn't
yeah. I
and
mean,
it's
even sort
it's
of,
easy to do that.
yeah. Well, even our '80s monsters like Freddy Krueger and Jason, like
Yeah.
there's like part of what makes Jason scary is oh god, I can only think of like the word we don't use to describe that disorder anymore, but like um yeah, like he's described as a mongoloid, and like we don't use that word anymore.
Yeah.
It's like that's part of why Jason was like like had a hard time as a kid was because of his disfigurement, and Freddy
Mhm.
Krueger is extra scary and horrible because he's burned, and it's like true because we're sort of trained to not do that, but it's like I did in my 20s when I worked at Blockbuster. We had a customer who had been really badly burned and would come in and was really sweet. So I had that moment of actually meeting somebody with that sort of and again, this is me needing to grow as a person, but that's what it sort of took for me to take that step back and be like, oh wow, people have made this complaint before, and I just sort of, oh, it's not a thing, until I met somebody that was actually impacted by it, and then I'm like, oh wow, yeah, I should be better.
Yeah,
But
a lot of that though is they're socially conditioning you to be afraid of the others. I mean, that's social engineering at its highest right there.
oh yeah, for
The
sure.
different, the misfits, make you afraid of them so that you don't ever, think twice, right?
And yeah, don't challenge the norm, guys.
Yeah.
You're
So
gonna be an evil dream murderer with a claw hand hunting stupid teenagers in their sleep. Yeah, it's just in my experience in this life, The real monsters are the ones who don't at all look like we've been conditioned to believe they look like. So,
No,
you know,
and the other thing is all monsters are human.
yeah, it's true.
We like to think that we're immune or above it, but we are.
I mean, all these women throwing their underwear at Ted Bundy.
I just
He
that
outdrank me.
yeah, I don't. I will never understand that whole fascination with people just loving serial murderers. I mean,
Yeah, like it's weird to me because I mean, every time I go to San Francisco, I do go to the various Zodiac Killer kill sites, but I
mhm,
also don't think the Zodiac Killer is hot. I
yeah,
mean, who knows what he looks like under that hood? But no, but that's not at all. Like for me, it's the like so because like well, I'm just gonna break it
the
down. So
macabre aspects of
it's
it.
not
The
even
macabre.
it's sort of that, but it's also more so that we don't actually know what makes somebody a serial killer like that. Like there are all these, like there's sort of that list of things like, they wet the bed or they're cruel to animals or they've had this type of abuse or they have this sort of there's a checklist they'll go down. But there are a lot of people who check all of those boxes who don't become serial killers and who aren't sociopaths or, you know, deadly
Sometimes it's
malignant
just it comes
narcissists.
down to some things called resilience and other things. I mean,
Yeah, well,
I'm
I just
sure if I had kept on along the path, it wouldn't be that much of a stretch for me to have imagined myself in that situation.
yeah. Well, I for a while I had a housemate who's currently on death row. Um, and when he was in prison the first time, he was on death. He wasn't on death row, but he was in prison with like the I-5 killer and who was the other one? There are a couple serial killers in Oregon at the not at the time they were all in prison, but he knew them. And he's obviously, he brutally murdered someone and did terrible things to mangle the body after the fact. It's a few years after we lived together. I was not surprised though when I got the news, obviously. Um,
Well, I
but
mean,
he
just
and
be
I,
grateful, but at that point, it wasn't you that was the mangled body. So,
yeah, right. When people said that, I'm like, he wouldn't have done that. It was that Hannibal Lecter thing where it's like he would have considered that rude.
yeah,
Um, like he actually like had told me at one point, like he may or may not have, said like he could make people disappear if anyone ever was rude or mean or whatever. And I was like, wow, that's touching, I think was the word I used, not what I felt. I
yeah,
was really glad that he did not live with us very long after that. But anyway, he and I had a chat about that, about sort because he knew and at the time I wasn't sure what I at that point was thinking about maybe writing serial, something about serial killers.
mm,
He knew these people. And I sharpened it too much. The tip is breaking. And he had offered to make some introductions. He's like, I could get you like a little pocketbook or a wallet made by the I-5 killer. And I was like, well, that would be something.
yeah,
But he and I would talk, and I would be like, I was like, but that's the thing. Like, you don't know. And I was like, it's like there's an ingredient X. Because
hmm
there are people who don't have any of the check marks that we normally associate with the serial killer who become that kind of a person. There's just sort of that X ingredient, and you know, so I don't know. It's really, because so anyway, he and I have, and he's like, yeah, it's like they got a demon in them or something. I'm like, let's not be that unsophisticated about this because I don't think,
yeah,
some of these people are God fearing, so I can't imagine, you know. I
yeah,
don't. It was just really interesting. Like whenever I was in college, it was like art, journalism, mass communications. I did a little criminal justice because I wanted to be for a while a criminal profiler. Thank you, Silence of the Lambs. There are
yeah.
many things that movie, and it's one of my favorite movies. But there are many things about that movie that have given me pause over the years. But the fact that for a while I wanted to be Jodie Foster in that movie led me to some fun choices. But yeah,
Well,
I don't know.
it's all fun and games for her until she's enamored with the um. It's very much a Stockholm
Oh my
syndrome
god, right?
situation. She just
Well,
doesn't the character in and of itself doesn't understand what it's gotten itself into.
yeah, well, and it's not only that, just like the books are worse, where she willingly
Yeah, I
leaves
know.
them at the end. And it's like I prefer the Hannibal movie, the sequel, because they changed that. Like, because I
Yeah.
read that book and where she runs off with him, I was extremely unhappy with that aspect of the book. I think that's the first time I threw a book across the room when I finished it because I was just like, that's wrong. And
Yeah.
whatever. But he wrote that book. Good for him. Um, he got whatever amount of money it was out of me for that book so I could read it the weekend it came out. So he got what he wanted.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so like I took some psychology and I took a bunch of criminal justice, and nobody could ever. I mean, like there are people who want to believe they've discovered the secret to all of that, but nobody really. It's like
We understand
embracing
more
that.
neurology, and neuropsychology is probably going to be the best clue into what that is. But I
Yeah,
mean, we humans are amazing learning machines at the end of the day. We do what we've learned. So if we've learned how to manipulate people because we had a chaotic environment, which is what most sociopaths do, they learn to manipulate
right.
because that manipulation is what keeps them safe. By doing that, though, they apply that to far too many situations.
Right.
And then we get situations where their attempts to control become violent.
Yeah. And that's sort of the other interesting side of it too, though. There are people who are sociopaths who don't become violent. Again, it's sort of like there's this missing. There are like two or three components that like get you to Ted Bundy or like.
Well, just because someone's not violent as a sociopath doesn't mean that they're a good thing.
Yeah, I'm not saying like.
There's plenty of sociopaths.
I'm not
There's
saying let's vote for
one
that
very
guy.
large one running around right now.
Yeah, right.
You
A
know,
couple.
so there's
Um,
so
right.
sociopathic is not necessarily.
Yeah,
The thing is that if you actually tested a lot of the people that supposedly run our world, you would find that they would have sociopathic qualities
yeah,
because there's some things about dispassionateness. Cannot talk tonight.
right. Yeah, because there is, and most if you get high enough in the government or any government of any country of any world, there's a point where you have to, think of people as less than people so that you can make some of those big decisions. It's
Yep.
just, yeah, I don't know, like, which makes it appropriate. We're coloring Cobra Eels, I guess.
Yeah.
Right,
Nothing like the terrorist organization bent on ruling the world,
right, with red
bending it to the
lasers.
knee.
Yeah, yeah. It's what's funny about GI Joe to me is like when I was a kid, I was not at all into it. Like in the beginning, I mean, other than Scarlet and the Baron and the Baroness, I literally got so my superpower is Wonder Woman would have a villain. I made her Paula Van Gunter, the Wonder
Uh-huh.
Woman villain, and she was shorter, but that was just because one of her experiments had gone sideways, and she had shrank herself trying to steal the Atom's power. And that was a big because I always, as a kid, expected we were going to get Ray Palmer and the
Mm-hmm.
superpowers toy line because he was such, he was one of them. I had, like the big characters from DC. So that was sort of whenever the Baroness came home and she joined the play pattern. That was her role, but she had tried to steal Ray Palmer's size changing belt and shrank herself, and he had become microscopic and was lost, and they were trying to find him. which ironically mirrored what they did with him in the comics like a year right around that time. Before I knew it, like the Sword of Adam storyline. So, but yeah, so my personal first two GI Joe purchases were Scarlet, so I could have them on Mothma, and the Baroness, so that Wonder Woman had an enemy. Like that was how GI Joe started for me, and then Lady J came out, and I was like, oh, she's really cool. So I got, and then the toy though had the baseball hat, and looks a little bit like Michael Myers. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. That vintage figure though, look at her next to the picture of Michael Myers. I'm just saying. And then of course, I found CoverGirl and Wolverine at a store, and they had like in the 80s. I think we were talking about this before we went quote unquote live. But in the 80s, that was again like I got into Joe at like in late 85, early 86. And I within the year I had Zartan because you could go to like stores in your town that still had like the Zartan from a year or two before and like his little swamp cycle, and I was able to get Stalker and Shipwreck, and you went to like service merchandise was the best. They always had old toys because they were so expensive. So you would have to pay a couple bucks more, but you could find. I mean, I remember buying,
And then they wonder why they went out of business.
Yeah, right.
Good business plan there.
And I wonder why every time people we have that like there are no toys ever on the shelves, and I'm like service merchandise. I was buying Indiana Jones toys in 1986. I would buy the play sets at service merchandise, and then we went to KB and got all the figures for like $3 for what, $2 or whatever it was at the time.
Oh, KB was ridiculous at the time for pretty much 80s and 90s for giving those great deals when they just wanted to move stuff.
Yeah. Well, the great deals was always on the old stuff that they had picked up. If you wanted I remember getting my Princess of Power entrapped to there because that was the only store I could find her at until until a few months later, whatever. But, in 1985 to 1986, 2 or 3 months, that's the entire summer. I may not even be into Shira. I was. But, and that was the only, and it was like $7.99 in like 1986 money, and Walmart had them still for like $4.99, and it was difficult. And then right away, the gold, the paint on her started flecking away because they painted over the vac metal.
Yeah.
And so every time, and then like all the vac metal around her joints, when I would turn her arms and her legs would all crack and fall away. So anyway, every time people are like, we're complaining about the Super 7 Silverhawks thing, I'm just like, my vintage Entrapta disagrees with you vehemently. As does my vintage C-3PO who had 2 broken hands and a lot of paint wear, and is made of a plastic that's very fragile and brittle at this
But you know
late
what?
date.
That 3PO vac metal lasted forever.
Yeah, the vac, but the plastic itself was so brittle, and like all of my take apart C-3PO, a lot of the vac metal like on his chest and his back where like you would take your fingers and hold them are like worn off, and that's how you could tell what color of plastic was underneath.
And mine wasn't still in good shape when I traded it in. So I mean, when I sold it, mine was in good shape still. I was a little weird.
Yeah.
I took care of my stuff, I guess.
My last C-3PO take apart was in pretty good shape, but the last Star Wars figure that weren't at KB through the discount aisle because we got all of the Power of the Force figures that way.
Yeah.
But the last ones I bought that weren't there were at it's like Perry's department store. My grandmother would take me there, and it was like summer of '85, right before She-Ra started hitting stores in my area. And we went to Perry's, and I got my Tila had broke the week before, like the rubber band had broken her leg. But she got played with a lot between 1982 and 1985. And also when I got my Tila, it was the 8-back Tila. So she came out later and she had like the art on the back with her and her staff tracking Skeletor and Beastman across the plains of it. Was an action-packed card, let me tell you. But I needed that. It had the mini comic, The Tale of Tila, in it, which I also needed. So
Yeah.
I could read that jacked up story where Skeletor kidnaps the goddess, tries to clone her, makes a baby, and is going to steal the baby, grow so it can grow up and he can marry her. Anyway,
Gotta love the 80s. Somebody was smoking
gotta love
something.
it, right? Um,
Somebody was smoking something.
yeah, and that same Perry's had all of the Return of the Jedi figures that they had left marked down in like one of his big like um
But by that
his
time, it
big
would have been Power of the Force running around
yeah, but
the
these
first
were all on
movie.
Return of the Jedi cards, so it was like right before. This was even after Power of the Force, and the last 3 Star Wars figures I bought on Return of the Jedi card were Darth Vader, C-3PO with removal, and it was the Darth Vader with the art, the photo change on it, where it's
Mm-hmm.
him point the one that's worth the most money, basically.
Yeah.
C-3PO with the take apart parts, and R2D2 with the pop up lightsaber. Because even though that was technically Power of the Force, for some reason, I swear my memories of it on a Return of the Jedi card, probably not, but my head would have probably processed it that way with the other two. And then a week
Yeah.
later, I was in Texas with my other grandparents, and that's when She-Ra hit. It was like the Goonies and She-Ra hit the same summer, and it was over for me.
Yeah.
Like, that was
There's always those toy points. I will be right back. I go check on the demon. And
yeah, no worries. And while that is happening, I will do this. Not that. All right, there we go. Just to show you really quick my progress. Um, Doing all the background, and I'm using a variety of blues and greens and aquamarines, just to get that underwater. So yeah, haven't started my eels yet. We might actually, let's see. Yeah, we're a little ways into this, but we might finish this page, and if so, we printed out other pages. So haven't. No, I finished on a live stream. I finished a couple. I did the Ghostbusters one, so maybe we'll finish this one. It would appear that when it's not live and I'm not trying to follow the chat while coloring, I get more done. So I may have to have a permanent guest host who can just chat for us. So the things you learn when you need to pre-record something. So there we go. Let's see, it's a couple different, and I'm going to take this blue Copenhagen blue and just do a little bit in here. Not a lot, just a little bit to sort of shade it
okay,
in.
there we go. Hopefully, had to let him know it was time for bed, and he was like, "Eh." I'm like, no,
No
bedtime.
worries. Really
Eh,
quick before you
no.
get back into it, put your picture up to the camera so everyone can see where you're at. Very nice. Perfection. All right.
Multicolored here.
Ah, no, looks good. I like it. So yeah. Anyway. So yeah. And then G.I. Joe sort of came in '86, sort of, you know, in between. It really helps that we found that my parents found that flag on sale when Toys Plus was going out of sale, and suddenly I decided we needed a US flag, and my mom was like, "Well, it is $80 from like 130, so I guess we could get it. That's a real bargain." Um, yeah, right.
That it was a bargain for it.
It
I mean,
was, and at the time, my dad, he worked in the oil fields. He was making pretty good money at the time, so like it was something they could easily. I mean, that was the same year that they bought a compact disc player, and so it was a good year. Overall,
Yeah.
for our family, it was a very fiscally advantageous year for us. And Toys Plus going out of sale was great because they had the Butterflyer for She-Ra, they had Claudine, they had the Sea Harp, like all of the vehicles and playsets I did not have from Wave 2. They had all of them marked down.
I can remember Woolworths and Dallas. We went and I got Prowl, the
Yeah,
Transformer,
nice.
when we went down to visit my mom's, I guess, grandmother. So that was my first trip to Woolworths. But yeah,
Woolworths.
she was busy. Great grandma, I guess, was busy trying to. I guess that would be great grandma.
Yeah.
Two great grandmas, yeah. Just she was busy trying to spoil my brother and me. So she
Ain't
was like,
nothing
"Oh yeah,
wrong
you
with
can get
that.
whatever you want." Really, whatever we want. And of course, me being a reasonable person, I got the small toy. You know,
Yeah.
I didn't get very many Transformers because they were like the most expensive of the toy lines that I
Yeah.
was around as a kid.
My brother had a few of the smaller ones, but we were really into GoBots. And, they were cheaper. And it wasn't even necessarily that, because again, that, like 85, 86, 87 even.
Mm,
Like, like if we had wanted Transformers really bad, we would have had them those years.
yeah.
But for me, GoBots, I again, I was uh collector at heart. But I was also like, GoBots are like $2.99 a piece. So for the same price of as one Transformer, I could get three GoBots and then a Princess of Power or a Masters of the Universe or some GI Joes. Like you could get more. And so if
Yeah.
yeah, and I know there was one point where like my mom was like, well, telling my brother, well, if you want one of those bigger Transformers, we could do that. And like I said, he had a Transformer or two, but I know that was the week where I was like, oh look, Gung Ho and Marine Dress, Jinx, Chuckles. Like I went home with like 6 or 7 GI Joes to his one Transformer, and it was like it just. I think that's more my play pattern though, like because I had, there was there was that love triangle that I had in my play pattern of Zorana, Chuckles, and then Zartan. Is that the brother, the twin brother, or is that a different
Yeah, the Xandar.
Xandar? The three of them were in a love triangle, and um,
That's disturbing on a number of levels.
yeah, and then that one ended. One of the last times I played, it ended with Zorana interrupting Chuckles and Xandar's wedding. Like when the priest was like, "Is there anyone here who has a reason why?" I had been watching a lot of soap operas, and that always somebody always jumped up at that point on soap operas.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, she interrupted. She's like, "You can't marry my brother because I love you," and you know, like I was obviously pretty productive for
You made
1987.
sure to make it really dramatic, right?
It was
Yeah.
super dramatic, and it was on the deck of the USS Flag, and
There you go.
She tried to run her brother over with the Wolverine because that was the only tank
No,
I
that's a
had.
bit much.
Right? It was pretty drama. It was fun. Like you know, um, yeah. And there was sometimes my Shira figures and my Masters of the Universe figures would do double duty, and they would get to be characters from Return of the Living Dead or Friday the 13th. So that happened too. So yeah, Castle Grayskull made a great haunted mansion from any number of castle horror movies or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was a weird kid, and I'm okay with that because I had a pretty good time. We lived in a rural area. I was weird.
Oh,
Like, I
realistically, I think a lot of the people in our peer groups, I mean,
yeah, right.
I think a lot of us are the weirdos. Let's be
Yeah,
honest there.
I'm okay with that. Like it's
There's
fun
nothing
to be
wrong with being the
creative.
weirdo.
Yeah,
We end
so
up growing up to be well-adapted adults.
I'm pretty well adapted It's funny. I was less well adapted all those years I was trying to be normal.
Yeah.
A big chunk of the time where I stopped collecting toys and
quote unquote normal is overrated.
trying to be a good grown up. Those were the years where I had the most drama and the most strife, was when I was trying to be a respectable adult. And I will say, like, once I sort of threw myself back into sort of all my weird geeky toy stuff and started chasing the coloring thing, all of a sudden a lot of my depression, like, like I was able to, I mean, with therapy too, like, I'm not like, I'm not going to pretend like all of this because I started buying toys and coloring, um indulging the collection stuff, adult coloring, these were useful tools, but
Mm-hmm.
therapy, medication, etc., um
But
helps
these are
immensely.
effective coping skills. That's the
Oh
other
yeah.
thing is finding those coping skills that one work for you,
Yeah.
and two, you know, give you at least some enjoyment doing them. Because if it's a coping skill that you hate doing, you're never going to do it.
Yeah, right. Well, and and again, I sort of briefly talked about it earlier, where it's like I had this sort of snotty adult mentality about, like the art snob thing around adult coloring.
Mm-hmm.
And once I sort of let that go, and part of it was, like watching people on YouTube who do adult coloring channels, um, realizing it's like a lot of what was going on too is, like art school. I was super artistic. At one point, I wanted to be an artist. I was going to run away after high school graduation to New York to live with my uncle and his boyfriend. And I was going to chase like writing plays and like making art and, that whole art nerd thing. And that, they both arrived in New York at the height of the AIDS epidemic, before people actually knew how exactly you got it,
Yeah.
before it was curable. So they did not make it out of the 90s. Well, out of the early 90s. So obviously there was no one for me to go to New York and live with. And I was not then the sort of person who would just pack up and
Do it
move
anyway.
across the country without someone to, like, an uncle or
Safety
somebody.
net.
Yeah. And so that changed. So I ended up being, and then I went to college, and a lot of my art professors, I just very sort of that art can only be done this way. And although I rebelled against that, I also acquired a lot of that. And I just really sort of I literally sometimes would make fun of the adult coloring people, like, oh my God, you're ridiculous. And it was that whole act during the pandemic of like finding the Strawberry Shortcake coloring books and wanting to get that Wonder Woman coloring book because it had a story that had been updated to the 70s from the 40s. And it was
Mm-hmm.
set in the continuity of the comics at the time, which is one of my favorite Wonder Woman phases. And then I got it, and I'm like, this is a whole story. And I was on a Wonder Woman message board and I mentioned it, and people didn't know what the hell I was talking about. And I'm like, well, and that was when I was like, wait, I bet I could color this entire coloring book, using all of my Prismacolors and all of my art stuff and make it fancier, and then put it on YouTube as like like a storybook or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And that's sort of how it started. Um, and then I just acquired a lot of coloring books. All of this, a lot of it is the stuff I bought as a kid that I never colored in because I was always waiting for the right conditions. Um,
Which we never
never,
really happens,
never really
truthfully.
happened. And
So
finally,
a lot of times procrastination though it does come from trauma.
yeah.
It's one of the symptoms that we end
Oh,
up
and I'm
with
not,
as
yeah,
adults. I find myself I make excuses a lot more than I used to.
yeah.
As I've healed from it, it's
Mhm.
become better, but not. It's never 100%. You're still gonna fall into some patterns.
I find it's
Trick
a
is
lot,
not falling into them frequently.
yeah, I find it's a lot easier to, at my advanced age, because I'm probably a year younger than you are, I think. I'm a
I
year
will be
younger.
50 in June, so
Oh, Well, then I'm a little older than you. So my birthday is in April. Um, so anyway, yeah, we're the same age almost. I'm a little
Yeah.
older. But I as I get closer and closer and have more time and like my parents like did a lot of good things, not so much always though. But my mother was 15 when I was born. My dad was 17. Like they were very young.
Yeah.
Um, like my grandmother on my mom's side had bipolar disorder at a time where you didn't talk about having bipolar disorder because they would grow interrupt you.
Yeah.
Even if you had kids, like you got sent off and grandpa would have found a wife to marry so that she could raise all these kids. Um,
Yeah.
my dad's side of the family, my grandfather was um, not all white, and he grew up on a Native American reservation where he was not well received because, understandably, the part of him that was white was seen as a threat, so he carried a lot of that, and then he joined the military, became a military scientist, had to work with Nazis Tiki boys from Europe in a
Uh-huh.
space program.
No,
Sorry,
no,
I'm not
Nazis.
monetized yet. I shouldn't be so worried about it, but at some
Nazis
point I
is
will. Yeah.
Nazis is probably an appropriate statement in that instance because that's
Well,
technically what
literally, it
Operation
is.
Paperclip
Like they
was.
were literally like they were just
I mean,
giving me things.
Operation Paperclip was about moving some of those people that were assets for the Nazis into the
Yeah, right.
U.S.
So
So
yeah, anytime somebody's like, "That's all not true," it's like,
actually,
actually, my grandfather worked with him, and that did not help any of his. So he was not always the nicest or easiest man um, for anyone to deal with. Um, both of my parents had stuff, and they weren't too young to be having children. I was far more intelligent and responsible than I used to joke all the time. I did the best I could raising my parents. Um,
yeah, and it's never good when you're the adult in the parent role.
yeah,
That
like
means you never really get to be the kid,
exactly, and like you know, so
and
but
it's
I'm also
understandable. I mean, my dad was an alcoholic and a
yeah.
cocaine addict for
Oh, that's a combo.
cocaine addict. I didn't know until I was 30 something when it finally came out.
Yeah,
I knew that there was an issue because he had three businesses, three
yeah.
glass in Denver, and these were doing good money, and he sold them abruptly. And then all of that money from those was gone in like 6 months.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's definitely a sign of some such.
You know, as a kid, you don't rationalize it because I didn't really. My dad and I had an estranged relationship even till his
Yeah.
death in 2015. A lot of that was because of the abuse and the other things. I
Mhm.
mean, he was very much about, nothing was ever good enough. You were not good enough.
Right.
I'm better than you are. It was very demeaning. And as much as I've tried not to do that with my kids, there are times when I catch myself.
It's hard. Like when you're raised that way, you pick that up subconsciously. It's like it's not easy. It's not as simple as flipping a switch in your brain because you don't. It's like for a really long time. Because I've done a lot of. I apologize to anyone watching this. It's about to get a little woke. I've done a lot of anti-racism training, and the hardest part for me of that was the first 6 months to a year, where it's like my first response every time, well, not me. I'm not like that. I would
Yeah.
never. And it took about a year for me to break the mindset of it's like, if you're not doing it intentionally, like relax. You're in a
Yeah.
situation where somebody who is black, who's like suffers actually from this is being really giving of their time and energy in a way they don't have to help you learn to be a better person and to break your thought patterns
Yeah.
because you don't know that's like what it is or and it's like once I
Well, I mean,
started
generationally, that was, our
yeah
parents and grandparents, they lived in segregation time, so it wasn't like it was.
Yeah, like my mother, like the year she dropped out of school to get married and have me a few months later was the year they forced integration into schools in Louisiana. Like it was like what 73, I think. 73, 74. So it's like, like and for me it was well, I'm gonna say for both of us, because we're both right in that sweet spot of Gen X where it's
Hmm.
like we never had a point where our schools weren't integrated.
No.
But there was the sort of integration that just happens automatically where a lot of the black kids are only hanging out with the black kids. And like,
Yeah.
um, I was
Well,
weird
there
enough
was,
that
there was
my
a
own,
lot as a
yeah,
child because my family. I mean, honestly, my grandfather, massive racist, and
yeah,
I do mean massive. If there wasn't a racist joke coming out of his mouth, he wasn't breathing.
right,
And this is my mom's dad, not the other grandfather was just as bad, honestly, but technically he wasn't the there was a whole lot of confusion in my
yeah,
family for a
right,
long time. I didn't even know my mom's biological father, grandpa,
okay,
until we moved here when I was 7.
oh wow,
No mentions, no nothing of him. So it was one of those situations where we're moving where?
right,
With who? Oh, you mean this grandpa? She's like, no,
no,
your other
the
grandpa.
real
What other
one,
grandpa?
right,
Did I miss that part, or did I miss that memo? What? But yeah, no,
yeah,
it was an interesting time, and it was one of those points where if I go back now, I mean, honestly, I would have rather stayed in Colorado, but you
mm,
know, you can only live so long in dumb fuckistan that
yeah,
you don't
right,
want to go insane. But the reality is, it is what it is right now. It's here, but I've learned to work within the broken parts of things.
yeah. Well, I mean, you kind of have to, or it makes you, and of all the
Yeah,
things, that sort of have and this sort of my like I'm sure you can to a degree relate, but of all of the things of my sort of survivor mindset is no matter what anyone has ever done or will ever do, they won't break me.
no,
um, they may push
it's
me and they may,
it's funny when people try to.
yeah,
It's an
yeah,
interesting day.
yeah, it's really I've had a few people over the years who have really thought they were going to break me and they didn't.
Yeah, my
And
ex-wife made a good job of doing a lot of damage, but
yeah,
there's a reason why she's an ex-wife. At the end of the
mhm,
day, I am grateful that she did what she did because then I wouldn't have met my current wife.
right. It seems to
You
be a
know,
much better fit.
it is, and I wouldn't have met, wouldn't have my sons. And my youngest son, he is difficult, and there are days that literally are just nonstop exhaustion from beginning in the morning to
Yeah.
the end of the night. But he taught me humility
Mhm.
in a way that nothing else would.
Right.
Because there was a point where you couldn't teach me humility if you tried.
Yeah.
That there was an arrogance to me like nobody's business. It's still there sometimes and it creeps out,
Oh, yeah.
but it's not nearly what it was. But he taught me humility in a way that I would have never imagined that I would have gotten from that. Because you never think you're going to get that from that. I mean,
Mm-mm. Yeah,
think I
right.
would get other things from that, but not. Yeah, you can't be the big guy. This isn't going to work.
Right. Well, there's some
You have to
things
do it the right way.
you can't sort of power your way through, and it's like that was a hard lesson for me. That there are a couple
Well,
bridges over the years that I've burned that I probably wouldn't have had to burn if I had sort of, you know, not dug my heels in and said, "Oh, really? Well, we'll see about
well,
that."
any bridges I burn because that person isn't worth my time anymore, and that's
In
a
this day and
realistic
age,
point.
yeah, but in my 20s, I definitely burned some bridges where it's like I should have and could have backed down.
Yeah.
But after 35, 35 till now, any bridge that's burned, there are times where I could be, well, I should have done that better, but I don't. but it also takes a lot more for me. You know, my 20s, it was my teens even. It was really easy for you to look at me the wrong way and me just like, oh, you're done. Whereas the
Yeah.
older I got, the less, you know, like I'm sort of, I'm really the person where it's like I will tolerate quite a bit if you're somebody I care about, or God forbid, love. I say God forbid because that's a blessing and a curse if you're the person I love. Like,
Yeah.
it can be really difficult, and I'm aware of that, and I'm okay with that. Not everyone is supposed to be easy. Um,
Yeah.
but at the same time, you know, like there are times I made it unnecessarily hard and probably deprived myself. But I also don't regret where I am in life right now. Like there's some things I wish were different. There's some
Yeah.
things that I would like to change, but it's nothing that like there's nothing in my current reality where I say, if I could go back in time and change this, I would. I can say there are things I wish I had handled differently, but I would never rewind and undo something.
Yeah.
And you know, like I think that's a good sign, either of maturity or just stubborn. Like I'm willing to.
It may be more stubborn than
Yeah, right.
I mean,
But
the reality is I think all of us have those moments where we would like a do-over for something specific.
yeah,
You
there.
know,
There
some
are
decision, some bonehead thing that we did, and you know, some choice that we made that we didn't see the repercussions until farther down the
yeah.
line.
Well, I say that with the if I could go back and change it and fix it without it changing my present reality, because there's nothing about my present reality that, you know, like I am with somebody that's really good for me these days. Like we're a pretty good match. Um, there's a lot about our relationship that is just flawless and perfect. I mean, he's over in his side of the room playing video games right now. Every so often, you might hear him curse or something as he loses. Um, but sort of all of this, like, there's no like sort of weirdness around it. Like, I have a
Yeah,
friend who tried to do, you know, like some online stuff, and it was just this constant thing of her partner. Just he was always like, oh, we need to go do this and we need to go do that, so that she couldn't actually ever do any of it because every time she would be like, oh, I'm going to try a live stream or something, he would like, no, we have to do this thing. It's very important. And if I'm important to you, I don't spend a lot of time with her anymore, frankly, because and that triggered some of my some of
yeah,
my like bad, you know, bad treatment of myself in the past with things I would put up with where I'm like, I can't because I was just like, you're just gonna need to put your foot down and do it
yep,
anyway. And he can deal. And if he goes away, then let him go. Because if he's not gonna support you in doing this little tiny insignificant thing that brings you happiness, then like what's the point? Like,
yeah,
I don't know. But yeah, I mean he's pretty cool. He does I'm sure he's sort of as annoyed that our house looks like a toy store a little bit, maybe, but he doesn't ever complain. So, and you know, it's also you know, we're saving up to buy something bigger for us. So it's like it's once we have our place, I'll have room for everything, all the joys, all the things.
uh-huh, sure, that's what we all tell ourselves, right? We'll have plenty of room.
Right?
It's all fine and good until
Eternia
you
will.
start adding to the collection. Then when
Well,
you add
yeah.
to the collection that, "Oh, I
I mean,
had plenty of room for what I had, not what I have
yeah.
now."
When it doesn't
That's a
help that
problem, see?
my parents, you know, did buy us everything, and like at the height of it, like we owned a trailer park, you know, and they got one of those little manufactured, like one of those little portable room things that you often see at
Mhm,
construction sites. They bought there was a little trailer sort of like that, and that put into like our backyard, which was like an empty lot, and that's where our toys lived. That's where Eternia lived. That's where the flag lived. Like so, you know, I've got obviously some skewered concepts. Like,
yeah,
but you know, I don't know. It's again like for all of the things that you know for a long time I did. have unhappiness around with my parents. So a lot of things that I don't. Like they literally did the best they could with what they had, and sometimes your best is just not enough. And that's something it's a lot easier to say and accept of them now that I've had a couple instances where my best was not enough for somebody else.
Yeah.
And I totally failed that person. And it was just, this is what I had at the time. It's that retrospect thing where it's like once you've been through it, you can sort of say, okay, I kind of get that and I can forgive that thing.
Yeah.
And my parents, in my opinion, didn't do anything that was unforgivable. So, I mean, my mom's no longer with us. So, good thing because otherwise there would be a lot of unresolved stuff there.
Yeah.
But
Sometimes that's, for me, having the unresolved stuff I can accept because honestly, those conversations were
yeah,
getting more and more. It was a lot of telling me how to manage my son,
yeah,
him not knowing a damn thing about what I was going through, and him, doing the judgment because I left a career because I've done this and done that, where
mhm,
I did what I had to for my son, and I
mhm,
walked away from school during my dissertation because there was
there
no
was,
way for me to do it all with him, and still is
yeah,
not. Because I mean, literally, I did a live stream that I was playing a video game. I don't know. It's about a month and a half ago, whenever it
yeah,
was. And for the first time, people got to see kind of what my life is like when
yeah,
Logan is up. Because when he's up, it's, every 5 to 10 minutes, he's coming to get you to do something, if
yeah,
not more, because he needs the attention, he wants your attention, and he wants help.
mhm,
And, he has ADHD on top of being autistic. So you've got attentional and communication issues. So,
yeah. It's a lot,
but yeah, people got to see that for the first time. And I was like, yeah, now you guys know why I don't do lives during the day.
right? Well, it's part, and that's part of why it took me a while to get around to asking you because I was like, I know it's not. I think, and I think for, um, maybe for some people, it's, because you do sometimes pop up in chats during the day, and I don't necessarily think people always realize. There are a
Yeah.
lot of times where I pop up in chat, and it's like I'm nowhere. Like often when somebody's like, "Oh, why don't you jump?" Ken's done it a few times, where he's like, "Oh, you should jump online." It's like literally, I am supposed to be working right now, but it's just because I work at home with the computer on at all times. I can
Yeah.
be in chat. Like,
You know. And for me, some of the times it's just I can watch things, but really
yeah,
what I'm doing is I'm watching it and then having to go get up and do it. My phone is
yeah,
left somewhere and it's still running in the background.
yeah,
So I can hear it if I'm in another room, but the reality is not always that too. Sometimes it's just I leave my phone somewhere else in the house because I'm dealing with, doing deep
yeah,
pressure squishes for him, or, we're going to swing, or, we have a swing set up in the garage for him so he can go out and swing. But, when it starts
nice.
getting cold or it starts getting too hot,
Yeah,
he doesn't like to go out to the garage. So,
understandable. And not at all unique because it gets too hot and I don't like to go outside either. Like,
yeah,
that
no,
was
yeah.
one of the many reasons I left the South. Like, oh God, it's too, nope, no, no. I just can't go outside ever again. So,
Yeah, and pretty much from July, like here, the last couple years, it's been, beginning of July to, pretty much now, you don't want to go
yeah,
outside. I mean, now we finally got, cold temperatures. I'm a cold temperature person. So you give
yeah,
me 40s to 70s, I'm good.
yeah. See, that's the
Yeah,
nice thing about the
that
Pacific
20s to
Northwest.
40s is I'm gonna need a jacket, but I can enjoy it. 20 and below, and then it's just, it's miserable and unpleasant. So we're back to that extreme there.
Yeah,
But
the last year I lived in Texas, it was like there was a 30-day plus period where it was 105 degrees or higher every day, and I'm like, I can't do this anymore. Like, just not anymore, guys. And so I don't. I moved to Oregon, and every year when we get the that super hot day or 2 or 3 where it's like 100 and people are dying, I'm there with them a little bit at this point because it's been over 20 years that I've lived here, but I then jump on Facebook and remember that in Texas and Louisiana, where where I grew up, where I lived,
Yeah,
where all of my family and friends are, it's 120 degrees. Like it's a
exactly.
gazillion degrees,
You're
and it
like, this
has
is
been since
balmy compared to
April.
that. What are you talking about? This is
Yeah, right.
95 and balmy.
I used to describe it as like, when I first moved up here and people would be like, "Oh, what's the weather like in Texas? It must be hot." I'm like, "Well, it's like this. You have summer, you have more summer, you have fall." No, 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 just kidding. It's actually still summer. Just that's a joke. It was just a day of fall. Then you have Indian summer. Then you have fall. Just kidding. Nope, 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 nope. That's a storm. Only 2 days. It's summer again. Then you
Mm-hmm.
have ice storm winter. Then you have early summer, and then you have 2 weeks of spring, and then you're back to summer. Like that. Those are the seasons. And
Pretty much. I mean,
so
Oklahoma's no different. We're like the little stepsister of Texas. So
yeah, right. It's like the hat. It's like a
yeah,
fancy hat
no, I don't
at
know
a
about fancy
cotillion.
hat. I don't know about fancy hat.
Well,
Have you met some Oklahomans?
I actually have. So yeah, I'm just trying to be generous.
Yeah, that
I'm
might
trying to
be
be
being a little
generous.
generous.
Yeah, a little
There's
bit.
a reason why I called it dumb fucking standard.
I make fun of the entire state of New Jersey, both of the Dakotas, Detroit.
Poor Lawrence.
I know, poor Lawrence. Like as soon as I found out Lawrence was in Detroit, I was like, oh my god, all of my comedy dreams have come true. He's a good guy though. Like
He means well. I think a lot of
he
it.
means well.
I think overall he does mean well, and I think sometimes he's misconstrued. And
I think,
you know,
yeah, I agree. Like I
but
think
I do think he's a generous guy, and I do think he's a kind person when
I
he
have,
tries to be.
yeah, no, like, I mean, this is behind the scenes Lawrence, of course, not on screen
Yeah,
Lawrence, but
no,
like,
no one sees what we've seen. That's
yeah,
the thing.
right. He pings me a lot, like there are a couple reasons that I have a channel and I'm making content, and um, two of them are Breck and the other is Lawrence,
Yeah,
because they have, both of them have been, Michael at Toy Habits as well, like. We're just have been really helpful. Like, and they all put me on their shows. I mean, Lawrence pretty much made up a show so he could have me on without breaking his Monday rule. Uh, and
well, I mean that's the thing is I'm sure
yeah,
some of that was he saw that what else was happening, and
yeah, no, I
because
it's a
Matthew explained it to me as he's stealing from you, so I was like, yeah, maybe.
maybe, but
It's fine. The thing is that I think what he's doing, he's trying that Monday thing, and it's I get it, but some of that is just he can ramble for 3 hours.
yep. Oh, he can.
I couldn't. I mean, I could, but it would be boring, and no one would want to listen to it if I was by myself because I
Right.
don't have anything to really bounce off of. And yeah, the chat's great, and there are times where, like, if I have a guest that needs to be off by a specific time, I kind of have to ignore the chat
Mm-hmm. Yep.
because if I go to the chat, we're not getting out anytime soon.
It's true. Right.
So I have to be, you have to make those assumptions. So yeah, no, it's, you know, but he means well, and I know he's genuinely a good guy. So I mean,
Yeah.
he just he just likes to stir the pot.
A little bit. Yeah. So
He's a pot stirrer. There's
it's
nothing
true.
wrong with that in the overall scheme of things. We need a few pot stirrers to.
But also, yeah, he is. But and I don't necessarily sense much malice in the way he stirs the
No,
pot.
it's not.
Like, like,
He's not
yeah,
doing it for the sake of doing it. He's doing it because he's feels like it's necessary to call out some things that
yeah, like
won't get called out otherwise.
it feels like, yeah, it doesn't. I never feel like he's, when he's sort of talking directly about someone that it's unwarranted or it's not, and it also is never anybody who either
Defend
can't take it or
themselves.
hasn't dished it out before. So like,
Well, it's never somebody who can't defend themselves, like some other
exactly,
people in this. Some other
and
people in this toy community that attack people when they know someone can't do anything back
yeah,
without
yeah,
risking their jobs, because they're not going to do that. They're not going to risk their jobs just to hit back at someone being a
some
small-minded,
little,
as
yeah,
as I have now redubbed them, Tooligan.
yeah. There we go.
Combination of tool and hooligan. So Tooligan.
That's a good one. And it definitely applies to some people.
So
Yeah, I don't.
yeah,
It's like that's sort of one of the things when I look at it, I find I don't
toys
want to
should
say
be fun.
surprising, more discouraging that it's like
Yeah, it's disappointing that it's toys, and yet there's what I
it's a
like to call the gatekeepers, as if they are some prurient interest. Much like you were discussing about being the art snob, they're the toy
yeah,
snobs.
yeah, exactly. But they never sort of break past it, and it's I don't know, like.
It's like the worst kayfabe in the history of kayfabes.
mm, and it's like, Star Wars is something I've loved my entire life. Like that was my first real toy thing as a
Yeah.
child, for most of us. But I mean,
For most
it's
of
always
it, so I think that was. I mean, because that's what we grew up with, right? I mean,
yeah,
it was Star Wars was that first, ooh,
yeah.
fancy kind
Well,
of
and it was
thing.
the first, toy line as to, like Motu. There would
With
have been no
vehicle
Motu
with
without Star
vehicles that you could
Wars,
go anywhere with. Yeah, it was.
no real American hero without Star Wars. Like all of our franchises that we're still collecting to this day are from Star Wars.
Hmm.
And it's some, and I have to say a lot of the sort of the vitriol, a lot of the anger, a lot of the weirdness that happened around Last Jedi, where it's like I stopped
Like
participating in a lot of fan
it's not
communities.
my favorite movie.
Gross.
Um, I I don't get the hate for certain characters. I do think that Luke was out of character. And yeah, you could say he's traumatized from multiple traumas and he's escaping and avoiding the responsibility. But that really doesn't sound like the man who would confront his own father.
Yeah, I mean, and
It
that's
just,
valid. Like like those are valid critiques. I think for me, what happened was it became this mentality where it's like, if you don't hate it as much as I hate it, then there's something wrong with you. And it just felt
yeah.
really
Again,
gross. Like,
gatekeeping. It's that
yeah,
gatekeeping mentality, if your nerd cred is reliant upon someone's opinion of you not liking this or liking
yeah,
that or
right.
not
Like,
liking,
how
and
dare you like this
it's
thing?
reductive at the best, and at worst, it's destructive because it really doesn't produce anything. It's just I am better than you, blah blah blah.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. It was just, and like part of the
Yeah,
bouncing
and the
back.
whole I don't understand the whole vitriol with Ray. There was nothing wrong with Ray. Now I do think that they did Finn dirty.
Oh, for
I
sure.
think I think Finn would have been a fantastic Jedi.
Yeah,
And
they
the fact
definitely
that he was a brainwashed stormtrooper and you made him into a Jedi, that's a
that
hell of a
was
hero's journey.
yeah, no, like
And for
there's so
whatever
many
reason, it seems like they abandoned it, and then by the third movie, it was just nah, forget it. We're not going
yeah.
back. So I think that was a
Yeah.
disservice, character wise, in that instance.
Oh yeah, there are definitely a lot of story. And I'm not an advocate of of them being flawless. Um, but there are a lot of flaws in the OT. Like that doesn't. I mean, I've said it once. I'll say it again. Luke and Leia were not siblings until the 11th hour of Return of the Jedi's pre-production.
Yeah.
Originally, George Lucas had Luke's sister on a planet training with the Jedi, and her showing up toward the back half of the movie, meeting Luke and them going together to fight Vader. And then, of course, Wisely at some point he's like, we actually have not really even set any of that up at all through this
Yeah,
whole
but
movie.
it
So
it
let's
puts
not
up
do that,
it really puts a bad taste in your mouth when you know
right?
that he was pining after his own sister. I'm just saying.
Right.
A little
And then
bit.
they were like,
Yeah, that's some bad planning right
and
there.
it's
I'm just saying.
that, and it was that rewrite where they were like, yeah, like we should not do that. But we
That
set
doesn't
that up.
sound bad at all, George. Go for it. Why
Yeah,
not?
we need a sister.
Incest.
Let's make it Leia.
Everybody in
Oh, yeah.
Alabama will kick a kick out of that.
Well, and then yeah, right, and that's at the same point where they're like, oh, also Leia doesn't show up till the second half of the movie because she is on Endor with the rebels, setting up for this battle. Why don't we have her sneak into Jabba's palace and get captured? So like all of that was like one of the last drafts, which is one of the things when people like want to have conversations around Carrie Fisher and her dislike of the gold bikini. When she got the first script for Return of the Jedi, none of that was in it. It was like one of the last scripts she got where all of a sudden she's like in a bikini with her boobs hanging out, half naked, chained to a slug, at a time where she was grappling with drug
Body
and
issues.
the accompanying body issues that went with that. Like,
Hmm.
it was not easy to, she was always told, like in the first movie, they told her the whole time, like, you're 10 pounds too fat. You need to, Jodie Foster wasn't that, she jokes. I don't know if they actually said Jodie Foster was skinny, but Jodie Foster was pretty thin. No, it came down to her and Jodie Foster at the very end. Um, but through the whole entirety of those movies, like she grappled with weight and them always telling her she was too big, and then they're sticking her in a gold bikini with everything
Yeah.
hanging out while she's grappling with like her whole issue was her undiagnosed mental illness. Like
Yeah.
she didn't know she was bipolar until after her second or third time getting her stomach pumped and like ODing, and it's like and that's like that's neither here nor there, I guess. But
Yeah. No, I
I
mean,
don't know. It's just
it
it's a lot
magnified those issues for her, and
for
it
sure,
did. It
right?
created that magnification and
And suddenly
gave her
she's this meg
basically a
symbol.
powder keg for her addiction issues later.
Yeah, for sure. So like, but again, like anytime I hear like how poorly plotted or they made it up at the seat of their pants. It did not go as well as it did for George Lucas, but at the same time, like,
All you got to do is look at the prequels for George Lucas to see him when he just the
yeah,
stories in and of themselves they're disjointed at best,
yeah, because he bit off more than he could chew.
and it shouldn't have been 3 movies. It should have been probably 5.
It could, yeah. Well,
Because
my
you
my
there
my
was just
theory has
so much.
always been it should have started
Yeah,
with Attack of the Clones. That should have been episode 1.
yeah, and then the Clone
We,
Wars should have been episode 2,
yeah,
and if you wanted to
yeah, we would.
show Anakin as a child, there's no reason that you couldn't have done that as part. If you combine the Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones together into one movie, you could probably plot wise do that.
Not even that. Just there's your kids show, George, that you wanted.
Yeah.
There's your weekly Saturday morning cartoon, Young Anakin.
I think the slave boy would be a little bit heavy handed for kids. Just
Yeah,
saying.
but rest
Just a
assured,
smidge.
if he had done it in this day and age, we would still have people arguing that it was okay, and that people are
Yeah.
just too sensitive and woke now to be
Yeah,
because
exactly.
they're unhappy about the slavery aspect. See, white
Yeah.
people were slaves too.
Oh god.
I may
I
edit
just that whole argument just makes me
that.
irritable as
Right?
shit. I'm like, really?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I might edit
When was
that.
that? Oh, debtor slave. Not the same fucking
Yeah,
thing, folks.
indentured servants. Okay, yeah, let's talk about the differences. All right, good job. Yeah, but And it takes an understanding of history to know the nuances and the differences there, and the fact that they're two different things.
You're saying the quiet part out loud, Allison. Oh my
You know,
god, they gotta study history. What? They
oh
gotta
my God,
study.
I Googled it, and that's not what I got whenever the first three results came up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we
Anyway,
we live in a time where history isn't history, where truth isn't truth,
it's sad but
and the
true.
broken people are running the asylum.
Pretty much. I am totally not even necessarily coloring these correctly, but I like how it
Oh, I'm
looks.
not really either. I don't think. I mean, I don't have my eels out here to really color them
I I
properly.
I have the
I
I
am
think
just.
it's 3D Joe. I have like they have the a carded example of him.
Oh yeah,
So it's got
yeah,
the
yeah.
card and the figure, and it's a lot of gray and red. So I'm
It is.
using
It's
different grays
gray
and
and
black,
that
gray and
maroonish
like
red.
black, and yeah. So it's all about the water. I'm gonna probably go in and shade it with some blue, but
I
I
pretty
know
much made my water multicolored anyway, so
I just use greens and blues and turquoises, and
and mine's purple and blues and
nothing wrong with that.
see, there we go. There's mine so far.
That's excellent. I like it.
So,
Should pull mine up. I'll pull mine up real quick. There we go. Oh, there's Aaron's. There is mine. Oh, coming
nice.
along. Oh, it's getting there. One day I'll get how all this works. It'll help once I get the webcam so that it's not like the phone frame. I
Yeah.
can't figure out how to force it out of that. And there are things online that keep telling me I should be able to do it, but then they don't actually tell me how to do it. So
I
I
don't use a secondary camera, so I
yeah,
mean, I've tried it, and I was just like, you know what, forget it. So when I do my customization and stuff on my lives, I just pull the camera and put it over,
right.
you
Well,
know.
it's funny. Originally, like the people over in ColorTube I talked to were like, "Oh, you don't need one. You just need the one." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And but then I realized that was still my phone. And then I also
Yeah.
realized because I'm sort of straddling the line between ColorTube and ToyTube that um, I need to be on camera sometimes. So I'm just gonna get this, and I have like a laptop that I'll be able to set up for like the page view. So it just not. What's ironic is by the time this airs, I will have all of that set up. So this one will be a.
So
I'll
what
put
are
it
you
as a
saying? Are
special.
you
I
saying
don't
this will look
realize.
like it was done in the dark ages before the
No,
camera?
no, it'll just be a flashback episode.
There
I'll
you go.
even throw that into when I make the thumbnail this next day or two. I'll even like find a little like label to throw on there. Special flashback episode.
Yeah. Back when I didn't have the right tools to do the job. For me, anyway.
Well,
I
that's
don't. I
technically
bought. I bought this little $20 webcam, and that's all I cared about. I mean, I
yeah,
wasn't worried. I mean, the
yeah,
biggest thing was getting the StreamYard that was the paid StreamYard so that I could do
mhm,
the custom backgrounds and stuff like that for guests.
yeah.
Took me a while to get to that, but it wasn't too long.
I'm still using the free StreamYard, but
And there's no
not much
reason to
longer.
change unless
Once I
you
get
really need the other
yeah,
kind of
exactly.
background. I mean,
Yeah, I'm not at that point just yet, but it would be, there's sort of a limit as to how many hours you can live stream, and
yeah. Well,
um,
it just keeps you, yeah, keeps you in that point where you kind of
yeah,
eventually have to cave. But
eventually, yeah. So because like
if it,
e- even before this, I got the notice like you've only got so many hours left, and I'm like, wait, how? And then I went and looked. I'm like, it's like 6 hours. I think I'm good. Thanks, Streamyard. I'm good because all I have before it resets is tonight. So I'm like, we're good. Like Aaron and I aren't going to go 17 hours. Like
no, I'm not Oz. Nope. I did 5 hours last Saturday, and I was
Yeah, oh my
dying
god,
on
it was
Sunday.
so funny. I was gonna jump on there, and then I was just like, I was super wiped, and it's like I had to stream in the morning. My poor kitty, has
Well, you
been
said the
sick,
kitty
and
was
I was
sick or
like,
something, right?
yeah, he at this point it's probably just a cold. He got antibiotics and an anti-inflammatory, and he bounced back after about a week of that. But he was just really lethargic, and he wouldn't eat solid food. His pee was really dark.
Mm.
Last Sunday night, so like the night after the stream, he was just really lethargic. No, it was the week before. No, wait, the pee was dark this last weekend. So yeah, it's a little mixed, but it was after he'd been treated. We'd been giving him meds for a few days, but he had stopped kind of drinking, and it was just really stressful. We lost his sister in July of 2022, and he mourned her very much.
Mm.
And it happened on a Sunday when Geek Dad Life was on, and I was watching Geek Dad Life whenever she got bad, and we had to
Mm.
take her to the pet emergency room, and she did not come home with us. So just
Oh.
having him not feeling well was like, and it's like I had done the stream Friday night with Kayla and Johnny and Brick for Follow the House of Usher, and then I had my 11
Mhm.
a.m. with the next morning with oh god, who did I have? Oh, it was Kayla and Muriel and Andrew from Gades.
Yeah.
So that was cool because one, it was just sort of a hangout, but I also didn't want to cancel it because it was a good distraction. Like
Yeah.
a lot of my stress coping mechanism is distraction because if it's not something I can take action and fix, if it just
Yeah.
has to run its course, better to fill the time with distractions.
Yeah. Exactly.
And
No, sometimes it's necessary.
and I'm pretty adept at the I'm sure you did because of the age we are. Remember Point of No Return with Bridget Fonda?
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and there was a scene where and they're teaching her how to be a good assassin, and they're like, if there's anything that ever bad happens, instead of losing your cool or whatever, just say something like offhanded, like, I never did mind about the little things. And of course she uses it later. It's not quite as elegant as it was when Anne Bancroft did it, but
Yeah.
she uses it later. And yeah, even at the age I was, like 18 or 19 when that came out, I remember being really taken by that concept of like, you just find that space in the moment and you focus all of that into like, like I never did mind about the little things, and just sort of plow your way through it until you're in a better place.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of stuck with me and
It's a
it,
version of
it
it.
was easy
Honestly,
fun to do.
that's a version of mindfulness, really, if you think about it.
Yeah. Well, it's like it's just for me. It's like if I can't deal with it in the moment, or if dealing with it is going to make it more difficult, I would rather distract myself, put it aside, and then deal with it when I can. We
I
did
mean,
reach a point in my life where
as
I was
long as you
never
have that
dealing with it.
availability to deal with it when you can.
Yeah, like I
Sometimes
didn't
that's a
always.
procrastination tactic.
Yeah, but for a long time, now it works. But for a while, it did not work long term. But sometimes it's just about getting through that moment, and
Yeah. And
whatever
sometimes
will
it's
be
giving
will be.
you a moment to reflect before you
Yeah. So
overreact.
yeah, because I am prone to overreaction, to be honest, and that
And
is something.
that high reactivity is normal for people dealing with traumas. So it's one of those
Yeah,
things where if I don't address my needs at certain points, if I have to take that moment, I have to take that moment at that time. Because if I
yeah,
don't, bad stuff's gonna happen.
yeah.
It's not
So
gonna be the
yeah,
pleasant person that you're talking to. It's somebody that you don't want to talk to. I promise.
yeah, no,
He's the version of me that is not a nice person.
Yeah, see, I'm not always nice in the moment if I deal with it. So some of it is like me knowing I'm going to fly off the handle and be a very not nice person. And there's sometimes where it's okay to be not nice to somebody in a moment where they've done something not nice to you. But sometimes, like when it's, yeah, often in those moments, like that's when you burn the bridge, because
Yeah,
you say something that you can't, and that you don't necessarily want to take back, but maybe not, you don't want to say it that way. And
yeah.
sometimes it's something that person does need to hear, but that doesn't mean they need to hear it in that moment and in that way. So,
Well, I mean, one of the things with autism, particularly for me, is that I will say those things sometimes, and I don't
yeah,
mean to come off in a way because the way that I
yeah,
speak is significantly more callous than it's intended.
yeah,
So then I have to play damage control because it's like, yeah, that's not what I was really meaning. I mean, I was
right.
meaning to say the words, but I wasn't meaning to say them like that.
The words were right, the tone and the intent of the moment were not.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
So yeah, damage control
very
becomes a fascinating aspect of my life. And then there are some times where I just let it fly because honestly, that person just deserves it.
yeah. Sometimes people just need to be blasted. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, it's sort of like those moments where do you
Honestly,
let
if
the
I've
baby
gotten to
grab?
that point where I'm putting you on blast, I promise you it's long overdue.
Yeah, it's rare for me to ever go off on somebody who hasn't made a history of being what's the tech damn ass fool. I think that's a technical word.
Mhm.
What we're not going to do today, sir, is let that fly because I've let it fly too many times. And today is the day of reckoning, Carl. Today is the day.
That's where you go, "Yeah, we can do one of 2 things. We can bury you or bury this. Which one you want?"
And then, it's right. And sometimes it's just, yeah. Sometimes though people will catch me sort of off guard, and it will like one of my exes was like, my wife is really curious about you and she wants to be friends. And of course I roll my eyes. I mean, it's through a message, right? So it's like it's not a
Mhm.
thing that I have to actually deal with. So I just roll my eyes and I'm like, oh my god, why? um didn't think much of it, right?
Yeah.
And then get a random message from her through Facebook one day, and she's going on and on and like, oh my god, I can't, it's so amazing that we're going to get to talk and we can be friends and blah blah blah. And basically just it was a lot, and I
That's
it
just
was not,
weird.
it was weird, it was a strange boundary.
I'm just trying to understand that whole why she felt the
There's
need
not a way
to
to like there's a way you could slide that in for
I
sure, but that was
I
not the
just
way to do it.
you know what? If there's not, kids or other things involved, that dynamic sounds very fucking weird.
Yeah, it was for me a very just, but why? Um,
Eh,
like he would show
I'm
up in
right
my
there
life
with you. I'm
sometimes.
like, why do you need to have a relationship with someone's ex if there's not any reason for you to talk to them? Why? The only thing I can think of is that maybe she was afraid of you. I don't know.
I I've said I did not help her because she caught me at the wrong time. It was super weird. It triggered me, and I just replied, "Oh, it must have been cold there in my shadow." And I never heard from
Oh,
her again. I never heard from her again.
yeah, oh, yeah, yeah.
He
That
sent a
was
really, really angry message about me being rude, but I'm just like, what? It's a
well,
song.
first off, that's just fucking weird, dude.
Right, like, why? Why did you
Exactly at what
encourage
point do
that?
you need to have a relationship with your ex's girlfriend?
I Yeah, I don't, it's not
I
a
don't
thing.
know. That's a
Yeah,
no.
because
That's a hard no. That's a
he's many,
no.
many states away. It's not like, like I could get like
Yeah. I get it.
If
I mean, but again, like I said, there's like no kids involved. It's
there's
not
no
any reason
kids,
for you to actually have a
we're
conversation
not
with
in a
each other.
shared social circle. It's
Yeah,
not
it
like
was
he was
weird.
still
That's
friends
weird.
with my brother or like a family member where like I it's not like she was somebody
Maybe
I knew.
I don't know.
Just it
That
was
just sounds weird, and just in
it was
general,
weird.
him texting and asking that is just even weirder. It's like, why, dude?
Well, yeah, and then I was not receptive, and yet a few days later, she's still like,
She tried
so
again.
she just, I would assume, and I mean, they're divorced now, so
Well,
um,
I wonder why. Mm.
I don't know. It must have been cold there in my shadow. Is all I'm gonna say. That's my
Nah,
final.
I would say she was definitely needy of some amount that she shouldn't have been
Yeah, it
needy.
was
Oof,
definitely, and
that's some weird
I,
dynamics there.
I can sort of, well, it's an insecurity because I can remember that there's been a relationship or two
There we
where
go.
after the fact I've been, oh, that looks really good. I like that. And I think I just finished mine also talking. I don't know. I think her being insecure. Like,
Well, that was definitely a lot of insecurity coming through, but I mean, that's just
yeah.
there's some things that you can say and ask, and in a relationship, it just well, the only reason I could think of would be to keep tabs or for her to try to understand what he's doing. But you got two different perspectives in that instance. Fact is that your perspective on it isn't going to be the same as hers
Well,
because
yeah,
there's
and I mean,
history and other things that are not
I don't know.
important. That's creepy in a way that I can't really.
I mean,
It's
and I will
creepy.
say, there has been a time or two where I've had an ex where to piss them off, I became friends with their new person in their life. Like, oh my god, we should be best friends. But that was more about sending him a signal than
Well, that's just being petty. That's a different animal.
and there is that, but also in all those cases, those people are now broke up, and me and that person have they're among the best friends in my life. Like,
Yeah,
one of them, he and I do not talk anymore, and she and I like are in regular contact. We chat all the time, like like as I said to her recently, like our sisterhood is was one of the most unexpected and one of the biggest gifts. So like it started me being a little petty, but it worked out. Like so.
and that's okay. But it's interesting the dynamics sometimes when
Oh yeah, for sure.
yeah.
Would I do
I
that
mean,
now at my age? Well, if Matt and I break up, I'm just gonna be a cat lady. So I don't necessarily want to date it. It's weird. Like
I'm just gonna be a cat lady. Get
I'm just
off
gonna
of
be
my
a cat
porch.
lady
My
with some
kitties need the
cats.
room.
Yeah. I'll be on YouTube streaming all the time, coloring like me and my cats, and we stream and we color and we talk smack about Toy Guru. It's the
There you go.
perfect laugh. Like, I don't know
Like, you
that
know,
guy.
it's weird because I didn't, when I started with this whole coming back to toy collecting, I did not expect to find the community that I found, and it's a good thing because
Yeah,
in
yeah,
some ways I'm grateful for that community and the people in it because I found a lot of like-minded people, or at least similar enough minded
yeah.
that I didn't feel like
But yeah,
the outcast.
yeah, especially sort of during the. I mean, it was the tail end of the pandemic for me that I started sort of through YouTube, but like on Facebook, I found early on all the Star Wars custom groups, ironically, and I found a couple really good ones where it was just like we don't talk about anything other than how much we love Star Wars here. No talk of this. The prequels are good if you like them. If you don't, that's fine too. But no, and I watch people get kicked out for like trying to talk smack about the sequel trilogy, because they were just like, we don't do that here. This is a place where all fans can chill, and
Yeah.
it's a big part of why would help put me in a place where I could start enjoying Star Wars again, because for a while
Yeah.
I did not enjoy Star Wars because it was just, this thing that it brought up to some, like as a child, like with the Ray thing, there were a lot of people who were like, well, it's okay when it was Leia. It's like, I remember the playground back in the day, and you guys did not like Leia before they stuck her in the gold bikini. And even then, it was really limited as far as how you cared about Leia. So let's not
Yeah.
do that. Or, like we didn't mind when it was Lando. It's like the action figures filling the pegs right now say otherwise. So, but that's a topic for another time. But I found them, and then I found sort of, I have to say, like Geek Dad Life, unexpectedly, like I've met so many other different communities that I don't know, and it's all because, and ironically, we have Toy Guru to thank for that, because if not for that debate, I would not have,
Yeah.
shown up at Geek Dad Life and started watching their. I didn't know who they were. I was Toy Habits, so it's like, but it did start with Toy Habits, but it was very. That was my channel for Motu stuff, and Michael was cool, and Michael was like, "Well, why don't you come on and talk about Princess of Power? Because we don't know anything." And I did, and it was around the time I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do on YouTube. Um,
Isn't
and
that
it's like,
always the thing where you're like, you want to do it, but you don't know what to bring, right?
yeah, right. And it was right before I started, got medication stuff figured out. Right before I started losing weight, so I was like, sort of at my least happy with how I looked. And yet there I was on the internet talking about Princess of Power. And if anybody talked about how fat I was in the comments, Michael yeeted them. So I don't. It was a good. And then the Toy Guru thing happened, and all of a sudden in the chat there were all these cool people, and I'm like, I've seen you before. Some of you were people who I saw in the like comment section of like the Toy, because it was a pre-recorded one.
Yeah.
Um, and it's like I started seeing, and then we were all on Discord for Geek Dad Life, and all of a sudden, like I found the, you know, Oz and Skelevator and like Toy Frenzy, and like it was just interesting, like sort of. And then like I went back on Toy Habits, and all of a sudden Lawrence is in the comments, and Michael was like, "That Lawrence guy, he's a little bit rough around the edges, but he's a good guy."
Yeah.
And so, I don't know, it's been really unexpected in a good way. Like it's given me faith in toy fan collector types. Like there's still always sort of those assholes that pop up, but for the most part,
Yeah.
it's good people. And when the assholes show up, it gets corrected. Like I don't know.
I
That's
think overall that the thing is that there's some in the groups that we're in is that they're good people. They've had some struggles.
yeah,
Some of them have fought their tooth and nail to get back to where they are, and toys
yeah,
just happen to be a way that connects them to the rest of us.
yeah,
And it's good because there are people that have kind of helped restore my faith. I was starting to give up on humanity for a while.
yeah. Same.
Several years there that I pretty much was like, "Are you kidding me? This is where we're
Right.
going?"
Exactly.
So
No.
i-
100%.
it's good to see that you know there's people that are willing to not only be genuine but caring, compassionate. Some of those things that I think get lost along the way.
Oh yeah. I mean, like I jumped on the other night. Like Ed and Luke were like, jump on. Here's the link. Join us. Tell us some messed up stuff from your childhood about ghosts and stuff. And like, I was just like, let me finish dinner, and I'm there. Like
Yeah,
literally, literally, I finished eating, finished my last work email, and I jumped on and talked about something I would have never talked about with people on the internet before on a live stream. Um, and had no moment of like, why the hell am I doing that? Because I'm like, yeah, there are people who are going to watch this that are not quote unquote part of the community, but at the same time, like, for the most part, we have a community of people. And like, um, one of my friends who does sort of YouTube, not anything with ToyTube, and does pretty well with it, was sort of like, well, when are you going to start having people who aren't sort of in your little circle on your show to color? And I was like, eventually. I'm like, but right now, like, it's too much fun hanging out with them and spending, like you and I just talked about stuff that
Yeah.
there wasn't time to talk about on your, or there wasn't like the circumstance for it to like really come up when I was on your show. And like, we talked very little about GI Joe and these eels, but like, it's a really good conversation. And like, I think the people who watch the whole thing are gonna have a good time, and I'll be in the premiere chat. Like, and I'll make sure to let Lawrence know we talked a little trash about him, so he watches.
Yeah, well, it was good trash.
It was good trash. Lawrence
It could have been harsh trash, but
could have been, but it
I
was.
I try to avoid being harsh trash to people because at the end of the day, we're all trying our best. Some people are trying harder than others, but we're all
And
trying
some
our
days
best.
it's me. I'm the one who's not trying as hard as others. So like, I have a lot of way more compassion for everyone having a day or two where they're not trying their very best. All right, sorry. There was just a spot that was bugging me. Like, wait, I can see too much black there. Had to go in and shade it, even though I put the black. I was saying no, and
See, yeah, I did silver and then gold, but you can't really see it
yeah, right.
because of just in general because the metallics don't work very well, like you said.
I use the slate gray. This is the regular Prismacolor, and then a bunch of the scholar gray.
But I did do blue and purple water, and then there's some
I
light
like that
blues in
though.
there and
Well, and it's
some coloration.
it's more of a violet purple, so it
Yeah.
100% works. So I just went with that. Well, what's fun is like this coloring. One of the reasons that I've been sending the books I send are it's the ones with that I want to do the whole book for. So this means I don't have to do a time lapse on this one later. But since I've got a page completed, it makes it more of an incentive because it's then easier because I've already started that one. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Keep going with it.
That's what's going to be fun. Is there's 2 books I'm almost completely done with. That I've been using for time lapses. So whenever I can put like a full video together with like the quote unquote lost story or whatever, that's going to be a lot of fun. Some of my content's a long game and it's frustrating because, but it's good that way. Anyway,
Well, I mean, at least you got plenty of stuff to entertain yourself while you're doing it and do the other things because it could be worse. I mean,
could be
honestly, at
way-
some point I will run out of people to talk to, and then it's just going to be. I don't know what it's going to be at that point. Eventually, I will run out of people who
but
will say
definitely
yes
lean
to
into
coming
the
on.
creative stuff.
So
I don't know. Like I think. Well, you say that, and maybe, but I think at the same time, I mean, like Kayla is collecting now, so at some point Kayla will show up for 2 or 3 hours
no,
to talk about
I told Kayla on Saturday that I would talk to her about sometime in December.
Yeah, right. But
So
I mean, like that's what I'm saying. There are always going to be newer people that start coming in.
yeah,
Like
the thing is I have to want to really talk to them.
there
And
is that.
I don't mean that to sound crass that I haven't asked people to be on. There's just
No,
people that I haven't asked yet. But
no,
there's some people that I want to talk to, and once I get through them, then it'll be you know, there's this list of people that I want to talk
no.
to, and
I have
I
that.
have it in my head that I want to get to them eventually. I have these people that I've been putting feelers out for a
Yeah,
while to get them to come on. I've got a couple coming up this next month that are part of that feelers.
nice. I put
I'm
my list. Well,
hoping.
I crossed you off, but you were definitely like on my list. It was, and it's
I
funny.
think it's
Like,
just I want to explore the things with the people who try to make it positive for collectors.
yep, yep,
I don't mind having a diverse opinion, like, and I don't mind having the, oh well, I don't like these for this reason.
right.
I don't like these for that reason. That's an acceptable thing, but the ones that are just negative to be negative and negative for clicks, that's not,
Yeah.
that doesn't stimulate me in the mental capacity to want to have a conversation with them
Well, yeah. I mean, like
about.
there are a couple like like I'm not gonna say his name again because 3 times and you summon him. But there's somebody I know that I could probably go to and he would probably join me just because he's that eager to be platformed. But I don't want to spend time with that particular person.
Yeah.
Like I don't have. I feel like it would just I would lean into the negativity, and that's not what I'm wanting to do here.
Yeah.
Um,
I
yeah,
don't mind safely talking trash.
yeah, right.
You know what I
Um,
mean?
yeah, no,
Giving
yeah,
somebody a little bit of the business is fine, but there's a point when it becomes no longer, for lack of a better word, camaraderie. It
yeah,
becomes petty and becomes
exactly. It just becomes
vindictive.
it becomes a cycle of like
Yeah.
feeding negativity into it, and it's just like that's not.
And
Yeah,
that's not who I want to be. I mean, I spent
yeah.
30 years being that way. I can pass on that one now. Thank you
Well,
very
and
much.
like the coloring thing, like part of
Yeah.
it is relaxing. It is a de-stressor. It's something that we as toy collectors could do. That's a little bit cheaper than buying 300. Buying an entire. You
Oh yeah,
get the right coloring
buying.
book. You know,
Oh, finally printed! Yay!
hooray!
Mm.
I also, my personal belief is the collectors who customize or do art or do something creative or still play with their toys are happier collectors and are less douchey about when you don't get the
I
toy
don't get all
exact.
twisted about the stuff when it's like something small or when there's
No,
QC issues or honestly, the reality is it's a mass-produced item. You're gonna have QC issues, and the fact for there's a lot of people that are angry about constant. The way I look at it right now is you've got companies that are trying to pump through way too much at once so they can get back on track because of the
yeah,
damn pandemic. What's
yeah,
happening is all those QC issues are a fact of that being rushed.
yeah, yeah. No, agreed.
So,
And
I mean, it is what it is. I don't
it's
get twisted about it. I just fix it and move on.
yeah.
But
And if I don't
you
like
and I
it,
are in the minority because we're one of the ones that know how to do it.
well, and I
I didn't
think
always know how to do it, and
when
I've
that is one
learned
of
it.
the things I run into where people are like, I don't know how, and it's like, sir, it's Motu Origins, like you just swap the pieces, like it's really
Yeah,
easy. I mean, I had Corey from Make Shape Create on, and he's MacGyver, like he literally let me get a
yeah.
blowtorch, and that's a lot bigger than what I do. But I also wanted to have him because he is doing all these newer characters. He's not stuck in. I mean, it's
What was
ironic.
there?
What do I pick for everyone to color? It's these old coloring books, but whatever. Um, but he's, like, and some of these characters are almost 10 years old now, but they're from like a DC multiverse Motu comic where there was a black He-Man, there was a girl He-Man, not She-Ra. It was He-Man, but she was a girl. Like there were two of them. Like
Yeah.
there was a Chibi He. Oh, I don't know if he quite fulfills the needs of Filmation He-Man was like, and he's doing all those characters. He's making all these different He-Man characters that aren't the He-Man we grew up with, and like having a really good time doing it. Like I don't know, I appreciate that. Like
Well, then you got Mr. Home Arcade who's making all the other figures too.
oh my
He does
god,
some amazing stuff.
he is like I want to have. He's one of my ultimate
He's gonna be
goals.
one of those ones you're gonna have to put the F-bomb filter.
I just put the warning ahead of time, but like I
Exactly.
know it's not going to be a problem with him, putting his work on. That's one of the things I do run into that. Well, one, there's some logistics to this, and that's I'm okay with. But when somebody's like, it's not going to be very good, like that's my first thing where it's like, that's okay. Like, mine looks good because
I think they're
I
afraid of
did
the
some of this in
process being
college.
on camera, and that what they're afraid of is there's someone thinking that, oh well, that's this guy doesn't do very good customs because I saw
Or
them on a
whatever.
live stream doing this and they did that. The reality is that I'm very open about my screw ups when I do it for mine. I've got
Well,
a I've got a guy coming on in November, Charlock, I think it's Charlock. He, I'm sure he'll be on before this comes out, but I can't remember what date I scheduled him for. but he's a Joe customizer and he's great. But I mean, he was like, yeah, I'll come on. And I was like, okay, well, I wasn't sure if you would or not. I said, well, you want to do live customs? He's like, yeah, okay. So we'll do
Nice.
live customs.
Yeah, well, that time I came on and did some live customs. I was just like,
Yeah.
nothing's gonna get complete because that's not how I work. That's why I haven't
Yeah.
really done custom video other than like when I did the tongue lasher video. I'm like, look, here's my snake custom that I did on Aaron's stream that night. Started on your stream that night because that's the format I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do like basically character profiles and just at the end, like, here's the recipe I used. Here's what it looked like. You have fun, kids. But
Yeah. I
I
mean,
don't know.
it's not. It's everything is a work in progress when you're doing stuff like that. And
Yeah,
when people get worry about that too much about whether it has to be finished or not, no, it's not. I don't care that it's finished. I just know that there's a certain time limit that we have to stop at. Like it was
yeah,
like with Brick that one night we had gone like 2.5 hours. I was like, okay, well, maybe we should start wrapping it up.
right.
3 hours.
Yeah,
It's time. We're to a point. I'm at a stopping point because I usually get to a stopping point. I pick
yeah.
things that I know I can get in accomplished in that period of time. See, I made my pipe. See,
Excellent. Very good. That's excellent.
I'm trying to use that for wire guides so that it doesn't stick out on my dio.
Yeah,
So
that would be bad. That's what I need to work on is my dias and my play sets. I think that a lot of
now that I have more shelves, I'll be having more dios.
that.
I have
Maybe that's the answer. I need different shelves. It's not that I have too many toys. It's that the shelves I have don't have enough shelves.
there you go. Is that there's 5 on each shelving unit, so
Yeah.
that
I,
gives
I
I now have 14 shelves for my Joe and Mythic and Cosmic Legions. So
there was at one point where the shelves we had at our house, it was aesthetic, but it also was cheap. But it was like my dad went and got a bunch of cinder blocks and a bunch of like those wooden planks that are about this wide and yay wide, and set that those were our shelves, and they went pretty high, but they were pretty balanced. And I had a moment where I was on Home Depot about 2 weeks ago looking up cinder blocks and wooden planks. Like maybe I just get rid of all of the stuff I have right now and just make them like that, and can fit more toys and have more shelves. Oh my gosh! And then my accent is starting to come out. I just heard it. Oh my goodness! That's because I started talking about the cinder block shelves. Uh,
mm-hmm.
that cinder
Exactly.
block is not a word I've said often outside of the South. So, yeah. All right. Well, I guess we should wrap this up because we are about
We
2
can.
hours in, which is late your time.
Yeah, I'm getting ready for bed here in a minute.
Yeah, this was obviously a lot of fun. I will invite you back.
All right,
Like
well,
I said,
just let
from
me
time
know.
to time, I'm gonna need one in the. I'm gonna need a
We've still got 4 other
pre-recorded.
pages, so
We've got a lot. Well, there's a whole book we could color, honestly. So, I don't know. No, it was fun. Before we go though, I need to ask you, how did you find Joy today?
I guess just coloring. I'd forgotten
Yeah,
how much I enjoyed it. It's been a long time since I've colored, like 8 years, because that was the last time I really sat down and colored.
well, and you've got the good stuff. You got the Prisma, so
Yeah, no.
you don't necessarily have to print out just to hang out. So I'm just saying. But one thing I will say is this is also this is my work desk. I don't have a fancy special streaming office, but most days at work I have nothing I'm making a video from, but the actual adult coloring books, like the fancy Johanna Basford
Mm-hmm.
and Kirby Rosan, all of all the big ones that people doing color tube do or I buy pages off Etsy. Of the Patreons and memberships, of the color tube people who make their own
Yeah.
art, I thought like I did her the other day, like put it under the actual camera, like She's not finished, but I just went in and did her skin and the hair while I was on hold. I was on an almost 2-hour hold for work, waiting for the
Nice.
VA. So I just went in and like did all of that while I sat there and listened to that stupid music. And you know
The
what?
music.
I
It's not
did not
music, it's
mind.
muzak. You gotta get it right. It's muzak. Got
I
that.
didn't mind that music as much because I was busy trying to get her skin and hair to where I can go in later and like you know do the eyes and do the highlights and everything.
Hmm.
I got her base coat of everything on, but it makes the tough part of my day job. We had an employee meeting a few weeks back. Um, that wasn't easy. Sometimes employee meetings are you have to give less than stellar news, and I literally was sitting here like the whole time just working on roses on a coloring page because it helped me keep my mood stable. Because
Yeah.
so there's always that. Just keep if you're sick at your desk for a little bit or whatever, nothing wrong with sitting there and picking at something. So
No,
anyway, you should do
not at
that.
all.
And this was how I found my joy today too, getting to hang out with you and talk, and color. Like
Awesome.
I don't know, it's the simple things. The older I get, the
Isn't it?
less complex it needs to be. Um,
Exactly.
so
Simple.
yeah,
I mean,
simple.
you keep it
Create,
simple.
create people. Play with your toys, even if it's just coloring in a coloring book. Like that's still
Yeah.
playing with your toys because you
It's
can
supposed
pick
to
all
be
the colors.
this is supposed to be fun. If it's not fun, you're probably doing it wrong.
I don't like the color scheme of that new classified eel. Well, just make up your own right there, sir.
Exactly.
So, anyway, all right. Well, we'll wrap this up. Thank you to everyone watching this in the future. Thank you, Aaron, for joining me. And
Glad
I
to be
will
here.
have you back. It's been good. You do good work, sir. And I'm happy to be in several communities with you. And thanks for the moss man.
You're very welcome.
It's very much appreciated. And wait. I would normally ask you where you're going to be next, but we have to be generic. It's in the future. But you do have your normal Friday night show.
Normal Friday nights, 8:30 Central Time. I will have a guest. We'll be talking their toys and why they're important to them.
And it's fun.
Or
So
doing customs or doing a dio or, I'll probably be doing a little bit more dios in December, but
it's really cool.
because I need some dios to be done because I can't handle the blank shelves.
Well, not only that,
It's so boring.
it's very, like you could easily have Rick back to do more Dio stuff if he needs more Dio stuff. Random diorama.
Yeah,
Keep
I
wanting
got
to say
those, and there's a few other guys that I would like to see try and come
diorama.
on that do
I think,
exclusively dioramas, but
yeah. So I think there are a lot of people that I don't know who they are that you do that would be cool. So there have been a couple of people who I had no clue who they were before your show. So I had to catch a few on the rewatch because people want me to come on the internet and talk about stuff on Fridays. I don't know what's going on with it. The kids Tuesdays,
yeah, exactly.
but and then Saturday nights, obviously, you and I and half of the internet are on for
Exactly.
20,000 hours. So
And if Oz isn't on, then I will run a show or Ed will run a show, and
somebody.
we will always have a Saturday hangout some way or another.
And when this goes live, your links to Aaron's channel will be in the description. So if you don't follow him, go give him a subscribe, a couple likes, watch some of the stuff. Let's get his watch time up, everyone. And since this is in the future, I'll definitely have videos coming out and daily shorts through the end of January because it won't come out after that. So that's safe. And I'll be here next.